Hey everybody, welcome to Sunday School. Another new normal, at least for a couple weeks. Hopefully not too long. We'll be back together. We should have some news on that. We're meeting tomorrow night, but for now, Sunday School is at night. We're having night school, so we have our lesson here tonight. We'll meet, as you see here, on Zoom at 6:20, and you can see here we're starting a new series. We'll get to that in just a second. Happy birthday today to Colton Case, if he's watching. Happy birthday, Colton. Didn't see you today, but if you catch us online here, I want to wish you a happy birthday. Anybody else that knows him or has his number or contact social media, I don't know if he's on social media. Wish him a happy birthday. Also, Wednesday night, we've got a new Bible project. Kind of reached a milestone. We finally finished the Bible, all the books of the Bible. It took us over 2 years, 2 to 2.5 years. I don't even know. It took a long time to finish all the books of the Bible. We finished Revelation last week, two-part video. We finally finished that up. So we're moving on. We're staying in the Bible Project. We're going to look at some of their theme videos, and we may just start back through the Bible since probably none of you remember, or very few of you were even with us when we started on Genesis back in, I don't know, 2017 probably. So, but we will be on something new this week. So, new series, Gone Fishing, is the title of the series, and we're going to start today talking about the worth of following Jesus and becoming fishers of men. Goes with the theme. Kind of figured that out. You've probably heard that phrase before. Fishing is not something I am very good at. I don't really enjoy it. I think it may go back to my childhood when I was about 10 or maybe 12, somewhere around there. I was young and I was fishing and I cast the line and the line got hooked on a tree branch, looped around, and the hook came down and went directly into my nose. And of course, I'm freaking out. And the guy that took me, guy from our church actually, came over and kind of real careful and pulled it out and had some blood and stuff. But I was fine. But I don't know if that traumatized me, but I'm just not big into fishing. Okay. It looks like the easiest thing to do and maybe the hardest thing to do also. Like sometimes it looks like you're sitting there, but there's an art and even a science and even technology to it because my two cousins are huge into fishing. One watches this bass fishing league all the time, or pro fishing tour. I don't even know what it is. They basically have these computers on their boats that tell you how deep the water is, and there's all kinds of science and technology. The water temperature matters. I don't know, but all this stuff they figure out. Um, but this series will look at becoming fishers of men, and again, we'll talk about that. So today we're going to look at Jesus' call to his first disciples to follow him and what that was like. So when Jesus was walking the earth, fishermen didn't have boats like we had. Think of kind of like the fishing boat in Finding Nemo, right? Something like that. They didn't have engines back then, obviously, in Jesus' time. They were about 30 feet long. They would have a sail. They could sail with the wind, or they could row if there was no wind. So, but the fishing method was kind of like Finding Nemo. They just threw giant nets out there. They would, again, some obvious, not technology, but they knew where to go. Surely, over the years and seasons, they would know which spots to go. So, certainly a method to it. And they would throw the nets in and pull the nets onto the boat and have hopefully loads and loads of fish, much easier than rod and reel like we use to catch one fish. Um, Although that method of the big nets is still used today, but that fishing culture from the first century is where we begin today. Two sets of scripture. It's the same story. We're going to read it twice. First time is Matthew's version in Matthew 4:18 through 24, and then we'll get the Mark's version here in just a minute. But I'm going to read Matthew 4:18 to 24. It says, while walking by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, who's called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." Immediately they left their nets and followed him. Going from there, they saw two other brothers, James and John, the son of Zebedee, in the boat with Zebedee, their father, mending their nets, and he called them. Immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. So we get this story from Matthew's version here. It's Jesus calling these two pairs of brothers to be his disciples. So at this time, Jewish people, Jesus included, these disciples and future disciples included, grew up as a disciple of a rabbi, a teacher of the scripture. Okay, Jewish scriptures were basically what we would consider the Old Testament. Okay, they were testimony of God's work in and through the Jewish people. They provided God's promises to the Jewish people, how he would restore the world. And these Jewish boys would begin learning from a teacher, and they would memorize portions of the scripture that was necessary for them to know, starting with the law, the first five books of the Bible. Hopefully, they didn't have to memorize all of the like lineage, the family tree stuff, so and so, and then so and so, and hopefully they got to skip those parts. I don't know. Then the Psalms, and then books written by some of the prophets. And the best students would become disciples and continue their education and their memorization of the best would learn the whole Old Testament. Okay, I was a word for word, kind of paraphrase. They knew that seems like an awful lot, but their goal was to learn the entire Old Testament. The disciples would learn to interpret as well, the same as the rabbi did. If the rabbi taught them one thing or one way, one thing, that's what they would learn. And being chosen by a high-profile rabbi was an honor. So it's kind of like getting into a top-notch school. Like, I got into the top rabbi school in Galilee. You tweet that out there, buddy, which I'm sure they did back then. So it was a big deal to get in with certain rabbis, and we'll get to that here in just a second, what that means. So let's talk about what these disciples in Matthew 4 and Mark 1 had to do. First thing, three main points. They made a decision. Okay, these men made a decision that would change their lives. This was a point in time in their lives when they would look back for sure as their lives lived out and living a life dedicated to Jesus. And that was the turning point. Like they had to, I'm sure, think back. Imagine being those men and thinking back of that time, that point in time. What if my ship had just taken off? What if the boat wasn't there? Or whatever. But if nothing else, certainly a turning point and the beginning of a whole new way of life for them and a whole new way of looking at the world. So usually disciples would follow their rabbi everywhere they went, back to the teacher and the rabbi and the student, and they would learn from him. If the rabbi was eating, they would eat with him, and we see that with the disciples and Jesus, right? If the rabbi was going into town, they would be right behind him. They would go to town with him. And Jesus wasn't a high profile rabbi. He wouldn't have been like the top notch, ones that we were just talking about. But he's kind of new on the scene, but certainly the disciples knew of him. We know that Peter and Andrew talked to him. If you look in the scriptures, and we know that he'd been around teaching actually just before the Mark part that we're going to read. It says he was out teaching. So they certainly knew something of Jesus. Maybe they'd heard him teaching and preaching, but they certainly had met him, knew who he was for sure. But they had to make a decision in that moment. Maybe they knew or felt something was different about Jesus. And if you ever wonder, and this is just in the and within this lesson saw this question, like you ever wonder if there are other people who were offered this? Did Jesus say this to other people and they were like, no, I can't. Wife has this to-do list. I can't make it. This week it's a bad weekend. Maybe next time. Let me know in a couple weeks. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. We'll ask that question in a minute. But history would have long forgotten them if they did. So we'll see. The next one, number 2, their decision was costly. Think about the priorities they would have had. Again, maybe they had plans that week. Maybe they had things to do. Maybe they say, hey, this really doesn't work for me right now. Maybe later. But they had to count up these, pros and cons really quickly. Obviously, they did. Recognize the potential, and then Jesus was giving them a chance for a whole new identity. They would learn from him as he taught, learn what the scriptures meant through him, learn how to apply them to their lives, and how to disciple others. And we see this all the time, Jesus explaining the scriptures to them. They would ask questions. We don't understand. We talk about this all the time. They'd ask, they just didn't understand what he was saying or what he was teaching them. And they were constantly asking questions and learning from him. Um, so now we're going to move on to Mark's account. But anyway, at any rate, it was costly. They had to give up their lives to follow him, their fishing business. So, and we're going to get into the second kind of the different perspective here with Mark. The other perspective here, Mark's perspective from Mark chapter 1, 16 through 20. And I'll read that real quick. Passing along the Sea of Galilee, it's going to sound very similar here. Passing along the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and Andrew, the brother of Simon, saw Simon and Andrew, the brother of Simon, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And Jesus said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." And immediately they left their nets and followed him. And going on a little further, he saw James, the son of Zebedee, and John, his brother, who were in their boat, mending their nets. And immediately he called them. They left their father Zebedee in the boat with the hired servants and followed him. So just an extra little thing that we find out here from Mark's perspective. James and John may not have been as poor as Peter and Andrew. It says that they had servants working with them and with their father. So again, maybe it was tougher for two of them to leave than the other two. But completely leaving your father with the boat, or leaving your father who still had people to help him, either way, it was still costly for them, as we just mentioned before. They didn't know everything that was going to be required to be a follower of Jesus. They didn't know everything that would entail, but they knew they had to take the first step, and that would be saying yes to him. So become a real follower requires attention, and it requires intentionality. They had to make a decision. They had to make the first step. They had to get out of the boat, drop their nets, and whatever they were doing before, whatever the plans were at that time, were canceled. Their life was changing. They were going to be disciples of Jesus. So since they were working with family business, they may have been adults. They were probably adults. Possibly may have been married. Many believe Peter was married at some point. But the point with that is adults didn't begin following rabbi. It'd be like adults starting in a school, like in a middle school. Okay, it didn't work that way. Okay, adults didn't begin following a rabbi or a teacher. Jesus was no ordinary teacher, though, and he was extending this special opportunity to these relatively average men to experience something extraordinary. So these men would not have graduated at the top of their class. They, they were in probably good jobs. We don't know what level of success. It was a family business. They were probably successful. They were at least making a living. And it was a average good job. It was hard work. Okay. But they had a good job. Jesus had this offer for them, though. And his offer points to their circumstance and, what do you want to do? What is your future role going to be in the kingdom? And he tells them, "Follow me, I will make you fishers of men." So we have to look at, what does that mean exactly? They would follow him eventually, these disciples, and become leaders. Okay. Don't just say, "Follow me, you'll have a good time, you'll learn a lot, it'll be cool." Follow me, I'll make you something. Okay. I'm going to do something. I'm going to make you something. Okay. Change you. They would come to see the good news as Christ, of what Christ accomplished, and would spread that word into the new world. Of course, they didn't know for sure of that, but he was promising them to do something. I'm going to make you something. So Jesus illustrates to them what their futures would hold, how much greater it would be with following him. But he wasn't promised. Notice he doesn't promise them riches. Doesn't say, "Follow me, you'll have a great life." Doesn't say, "Follow me and you'll make a lot of money." Doesn't say, "Follow me, you'll be really popular or really cool or everybody's going to know who you are." In fact, a lot of that was just the opposite, right? So there was no promises. And even those promises that he made, even that one promise, "I'll make you fish of men," wasn't immediate. It wasn't like it was instant. It was, remember the doubt of all the disciples and the confusion, even up until had died, been crucified, and risen. It wasn't until really he had risen and they saw him again. They really got to be fully into that fishers of men. Okay, certainly they went around Jesus, and Jesus taught, and they taught and healed, and they followed with some of that. Okay, but it really was not. It definitely was not immediately fulfilled. So, but he gave them a taste of what was to come, but it required them to follow. Okay, each of them probably had their own idea of what that meant at that time. Peter was the guy that was ready to start a revolution, like a military fight. But with Jesus working and teaching, these men would change, become from average fishermen to ambassadors for Christ throughout the new world, throughout the world of the first century. So what does that mean to us? The last thing is we are all faced with a similar decision, the third point. So through the teaching of the Bible, preaching the gospel, each of us presented with an opportunity to become a follower of Jesus. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. If you've put it off, maybe you'll get around to, maybe you never will. These men made their decision. They made it decisively. They made it quickly. Following Jesus, they knew required turning everything over to him. And that's similar for us. We have to become a disciple means we become a learner of everything that Jesus teaches. And then we have to implement that into our own lives, ultimately being a fisher of men, spreading the good news. And that's going to be different for all of us. We've talked about how we all, just recently, we talked about how we all have different personalities, different strengths, weaknesses, quirkiness, talents, whatever it might be. That's going to be different for all of us. Implementing that into our lives, because we all have different lives, different jobs, different schools, and then ultimately spreading that on to others. That's going to look different for everybody because we're all different people. We all have different lives, different talents, different abilities, and God has something planned different for all of us. Okay, but answering Jesus' call is something we all have to do. And it may have all kinds of consequences. It may mean that you live in another country. It may mean that you don't do some of the things that maybe you want or thought that you may do. It may mean other people exclude you because they know that you're a Christian. If you've not chosen Jesus, start that journey. Hopefully, you would do that today or very soon. Talk to one of the leaders about that. You can certainly text or email any of us if you have any of our contact information. Don't wait till we get back. If you really feel that call, Jesus doesn't just call people at the top of the social or academic or economic class. Okay, he's looking for people that are willing to follow him. Okay, it begins with trusting Jesus with your life. You follow him, learn what God has meant for you to become, and how you ought to live. There's nothing we can do to earn this, right? But we do have to make that decision. Jesus paid for us to be reconciled with God. He died on the cross for us, and he offers us this opportunity. Follow me, I will make you fishers of men. But we have to accept that. We have to make that new beginning for us and actually accept to follow him. So the bottom line is that Jesus has put out the call to follow him. Okay, and he puts that out to everybody, and each one of us have to make that decision. All right, if you haven't done that, hope that you would do that. Talk to me, talk to one of your leaders, talk to your parents, somebody you know or somebody you trust. We'll talk a lot more about this when we get to small groups here. Again, meet us at on Zoom at 6:20, and we'll have some more discussion time on this. We'll see you soon.